5 years had passed since humanity departed the Galactic Council, and the galaxy had learned to survive without them. Barely. The Grand Council Chamber of Unity Prime looked different now. 17 seats stood empty where species had withdrawn from the Alliance. The beautiful station that once symbolized galactic unity now operated with a skeleton crew, many of its sectors still dark from failures that had never been properly repaired, but one seat remained different from all the others. The human section had been preserved exactly as it was the day Helen Grant walked out. No other species was allowed to sit there. No equipment was moved. It stood as a silent reminder of what they had lost. Krell was old now. His bronze scales had faded to a dull copper, and his forearms moved with the slowness of age. But he still came to the council chamber every day, still maintained his vigil at the border of human space, still sent messages that never received replies. The galaxy had survived, but it had regressed. Medical science had stagnated at the level of knowledge humans had left behind. Technology advanced slowly, if at all, without human innovation driving progress. The problems that once seemed routine now took months or years to solve. A new generation had grown up in the post-human era. Young beings who had never met a human, who knew them only from stories and historical records. To them, humans seemed almost mythical. The species that could cure any disease, build anything, solve any problem. They sounded too good to be true, but their elders knew better. They remembered. On Torvian Prime, now governed by a coalition that had overthrown the old leadership, there was a museum dedicated to human contributions. It displayed the medical equipment that had saved millions, the power systems that had transformed their world, photographs of human engineers and doctors who had worked alongside Torvians for decades. The most visited exhibit was a video recording of Captain Ryan Blake performing surgery. Young Torvian doctors watched it repeatedly, studying his techniques, trying to understand his methods. But there was something in the way he worked, a creative problem-solving approach that they could observe but never quite replicate. An old Torvian physician named Dr. Calvin gave tours of the museum. He had worked with Ryan during the humans' final days in the galaxy. He knew he was leaving, Calvin would tell visitors. He knew we would struggle without him. He worked himself to exhaustion trying to teach us everything he could in just a few days. Why did they have to leave? Young students would ask. Calvin's answer never changed. Because we told them to. Because we feared their success and resented their help. Because we were fools. On the Makari homeworld, the famine that had been predicted never fully materialized, thanks to the supply caches humanity had left behind. But food production remained a fraction of what it had been during the human era. The Makari had learned to farm again using traditional methods, techniques their ancestors had used centuries ago. It was harder, less efficient, but it was theirs. And there was a certain pride in that self-reliance, even if it came at the cost of progress. The Council had tried everything to contact humanity. Official delegations had been sent to the border dozens of times. All were turned away by the same automated systems. Messages were transmitted daily. None were answered. 10 years ago, Krell had proposed something radical. A complete repeal of Resolution 7749. The idea was to formally restore all human rights and privileges, to issue an official apology, to beg them to return. It took 3 years to build consensus, but finally the measure came to a vote. This time the result was unanimous. Every single member species voted to repeal the resolution, to admit their mistake, to plead for humanity's return. The message was crafted carefully, translated into English with help from Linda Cole and the few other humans who had stayed behind. It expressed regret, acknowledged the Council's errors, and offered humanity full restoration of all rights plus significant additional privileges. Krell himself recorded the final plea. "We were wrong," he said into the camera, his voice heavy with age and sorrow. "We let fear and pride destroy the greatest partnership our galaxy had ever known. We hurt you because we did not understand you. We rejected you because we could not accept that you were simply better at many things than we were. Please," he continued, and there were tears in his old eyes, "please consider returning. The galaxy needs you, not just your technology or your medicine. We need your hope, your creativity, your refusal to accept that problems cannot be solved. We need humanity." The message was transmitted to human space with every communication protocol available. Then the Council waited, 3 days later, a response arrived. The first direct communication from humanity in 5 years. Every council member gathered in the chamber to hear it. Hope and fear mixed in equal measure. The face that appeared on the screen was Helen Grant, now elderly herself but still carrying the same calm dignity she had shown on her final day in the council. She sat in a comfortable office, Earth visible through a window behind her, and she spoke with the kindness of someone who had long since moved past anger. "Members of the Galactic Council," she began, "we received your message and your offer. We appreciate the gesture. We harbor no anger toward any of you. We understand that fear and misunderstanding drove your decisions, not malice." Krell felt hope surge in his chest, but Helen's next words crushed it. "However, we must respectfully decline your offer. Humanity has spent 5 years building a new path, one that does not involve the Galactic Council. We have found something in these years that we never had before. Peace." She paused, letting that word sink in. "In the Council, we were always trying to prove ourselves, always working to justify our presence, always walking on eggshells, worried that our success would breed resentment. And it did. The vote proved that our very existence created problems for other species. So we left," Helen continued. "And in leaving, we discovered that we do not need the galaxy to be complete. We have our own worlds, our own projects, our own dreams. We are happy. We are thriving. We are enough." She looked directly into the camera, and her expression was gentle but absolutely final. "You asked us to stay in our own solar system. We have honored that spirit by staying in our own space. You asked us not to disrupt your civilization. We have honored that by removing ourselves from your affairs. You have exactly what you voted for 5 years ago, a galaxy without human interference. We wish you all the prosperity and wisdom to build the future you envision," Helen said. "We truly do, but that future will not include us. We have closed that chapter of our history and moved on to write new ones. Goodbye, Galactic Council," she concluded. "May you find the peace and success that we have found in our own way. And please do not contact us again. This really is our final word." The transmission ended. The council chamber fell into absolute silence. No one spoke. No one moved. The reality of Helen's words settled over them like a heavy blanket. They had gotten everything they asked for. A galaxy without human disruption. A civilization built on their own terms. Independence from human innovation. They had also lost the greatest ally they ever had. Forever. Krell remained in his seat long after others had left. He stared at the empty human section, at that chair that would remain forever vacant. Humanity was not coming back. Not in 5 years. Not in 50. Not ever. The young species who had never known humans would grow old never knowing them. The galaxy would continue on its slower path, solving problems gradually, making progress incrementally. They would survive, but they would do it alone. Without the species that had once looked at the stars and seen infinite possibilities. Without the people who had treated every challenge as an opportunity. Without humanity, and in that empty chair, preserved in the heart of the Galactic Council, stood a permanent monument to the day the galaxy learned an ancient human truth. Sometimes the greatest punishment is getting exactly what you asked for. Krell rose slowly, his old body protesting. He took one last look at the human section, then turned and walked away. Behind him, the empty chair remained, a silent witness to a choice that could never be undone. In the darkness beyond the border, humanity continued on without them. Building, growing, thriving in their own space, content with their own company. Finally, truly free. And the galaxy, shattered and alone, learned to live with the choice they had made. 6 months had passed since humanity departed, and the Galactic Council was fracturing like ice under pressure. Species that had stood united against human expansion now turned on each other, desperate to salvage what remained of galactic civilization. The Vaxel Dominion faced revolution. Citizens who had supported Resolution 7749 now marched in their streets, angry that their leaders had driven away the species that kept their world functioning. Zorath had been removed from his position, replaced by a council that blamed him for their suffering, even as they had cheered his victory half a year ago. The Torvian Assembly pulled out of the council entirely, declaring they would seek their own path forward. 3 other species followed within weeks. The great alliance that had governed the galaxy for millennia was crumbling. Krell watched it all from his office on Unity Prime, a station that now operated at barely 50% capacity. Half the sectors were sealed off due to system failures no one could repair. The great symbol of galactic unity had become a monument to their collective failure. He had spent months reviewing every interaction humanity had with the Council, trying to understand what they had missed. The answer was clear in hindsight. Humans had been essential to everything, but their contributions had seemed so effortless that other species had taken them for granted. A human engineer would fix a problem in minutes that took others days to understand. A human doctor would cure a disease that had plagued a species for generations. A human scientist would have a breakthrough that opened entire new fields of study. It had seemed like magic, but it was not magic. It was simply how humans approached the universe, with creativity and determination that other species could not match. And now they were gone. Krell made a decision. The Council had proven itself incapable of solving this crisis. Politics and pride had paralyzed any real action. If humanity was to be found, if contact was to be made, it would have to happen outside official channels. He gathered a small team he trusted. Vera, his young assistant who had proven wise beyond her years. Chen, a Mokari navigator who knew unmapped space routes better than anyone. And Linda Cole, a human who had married a Savorian before the Exodus and chosen to stay with her spouse rather than return to human space. Linda had not spoken to her own people in months. She carried the weight of that separation in her eyes every day, but she understood humans in a way no other Council species could, and she was willing to help. They will not want to be found, Linda warned, as Krell's team prepared their ship for departure. If humanity wanted contact, they would have reached out by now. The fact that they have not tells you everything you need to know. I have to try, Krell said simply. Even if they reject us, I need to know I tried. They launched in secret, using Chen's knowledge to navigate through uncharted regions where Council patrols never traveled. For weeks they searched, following rumors of human activity, investigating distant stations, looking for any sign of where humanity might have gone. What they found instead were gifts. On a remote station in the outer spiral, they discovered a cache of supplies hidden in an abandoned warehouse. Medical equipment, food synthesizers, power generators, all of human design but simplified, made to be maintained by non-human engineers. There were instruction manuals too, written in 12 different languages explaining basic maintenance procedures. They are helping us, Vera said, reading through the manuals. Even after everything, they are still trying to help. They found more caches as they continued their search. Each one was carefully placed near struggling colonies or stations. Each one contained exactly what that population needed most. It was clear that humans were watching, monitoring the galaxy's distress and responding with anonymous aid. But there were no people, no human ships, no messages, no indication of where they had come from or where they had gone. At the 7th cache, Chen discovered something different. A small data chip hidden among the supplies marked with coordinates. When they followed those coordinates, they found a message beacon floating in deep space, far from any inhabited system. Linda activated it, and Paul Harris's face appeared on the screen. The engineer looked older than in his previous message, more tired, but his expression was gentle. If you are seeing this, it means you found the trail we left, Paul said. I want to be clear about something. These supplies are not a negotiation. They are not a way to bring us back. They are simply humanity's way of saying goodbye properly. He paused, gathering his thoughts. When we joined the galactic community, we came with hope. We thought we could be part of something greater, contribute to a civilization that spanned the stars. And for a while, that was true. We built things, healed people, solved problems. We did it because we believed in the dream of the Council. But the vote showed us the truth, Paul continued, his voice sad but firm. The Council did not want partners. They wanted servants. They wanted humanity's gifts, but not humanity itself. They wanted our innovations, but resented our ambitions. They celebrated when they thought they had put us in our place. We could have fought. We could have stayed and made things difficult. But that is not who we are. When someone tells you they do not want you, you respect that choice. You leave with dignity. Paul looked directly into the camera. These supplies are our final contribution to the galaxy we once called home. Use them well. Learn from them. Build the civilization you want without us. We truly do wish you success. But understand this, he said, his tone becoming firmer. Humanity is not coming back. We have found peace in our own space, building our own future. We do not need the council. We have discovered that we are enough on our own. The message shifted to show star maps, coordinates of more supply caches scattered across council space, enough to help struggling populations survive the transition period. Paul's voice continued. These locations contain everything you need to establish independence from human technology. Traditional methods, simple tools, knowledge that does not require human understanding. It will not be easy. It will not be as efficient as what you had, but it will be yours. The recording ended with Paul's final words. Take care of each other. Learn to rely on yourselves. And please stop looking for us. This is goodbye. The beacon shut down, its message delivered. Krell stood in silence, feeling the weight of that finality. Humanity was not hiding. They were not playing hard to get. They had genuinely moved on. Linda wiped tears from her eyes. He is right. They are not coming back. We need to accept that. The team returned to Unity Prime with their findings. Krell presented the message to what remained of the council. He showed them the supply caches, explained the pattern of human aid being delivered across the galaxy. They are still helping us, he told the assembled representatives, not because they want something from us, not because they seek reconciliation, but simply because that is who humans are. Even after we rejected them, they cannot stop themselves from trying to help. But they are doing it anonymously, Krell continued. They are giving us the tools to survive without them. They are teaching us to stand on our own, because they do not want us dependent. They do not want us coming back to them. They want us to succeed without them. The council chamber fell silent. For the first time, many representatives truly understood what they had lost. Not just technology or medicine or engineering expertise. They had lost a species that genuinely cared about the well-being of others, even others who had rejected them. Zorath, attending the session as a disgraced former representative, stood to speak. I was wrong, he said quietly. I convinced this council that humanity was a threat. I believed we were containing their ambition. I did not realize that their ambition was to help us all succeed together. He looked around the chamber. They were never our enemies. They were the best friends we ever had, and we threw that friendship away. Krell nodded slowly. The question now is, what do we do about it? 1 month after the vote, the galaxy was dying. Not literally, not all at once, but slowly. System by system, like a body shutting down when vital organs failed. The power station on Torvian Prime went dark on a Monday. Engineers had been trying to fix a problem with the main reactor for 3 days, following maintenance protocols that human technicians had established decades ago. But the protocols assumed a level of understanding that the Torvian engineers simply did not have. When they made a small mistake in the cooling system, the automatic safeties shut everything down. 20 million Torvians lost power. Hospitals switched to emergency backup systems that would last maybe a week. The Torvian government sent desperate requests across the galaxy, begging for experts who understood human-designed power systems. No one came. Every species in the council was facing similar problems. On the Zenthari colony ship Endless Journey, alarms screamed through the corridors. The vessel carried 15,000 colonists traveling to a new world, a journey that would take another 2 years. But the life support systems were failing, and the Zenthari engineers could not figure out why. Captain Nira stood on the bridge, her tentacles trembling with stress as she read the reports. The systems had been designed by human contractors from the Bennett Engineering Corporation. They were efficient, reliable, and nearly impossible for non-humans to fully understand. The air recyclers are operating at 60% capacity, her chief engineer reported. If we cannot fix them, we will have to wake only half the colonists at a time. The others will have to stay in stasis. Can we reach the nearest station? Nira asked. Yes, but they have no one who understands these systems either. The human engineers left 3 weeks ago. Nira made the hard choice. Half the colonists would remain frozen until they reached their destination. Families would be separated. Lives put on hold, all because the Endless Journey depended on technology they could not maintain without human help. The medical crisis hit hardest in the Mokari Union, a plague that should have been easily treatable with human medicine was now spreading unchecked. The Mokari had the medicine, produced in factories built by human pharmaceutical companies, but the production facilities were failing one by one. Dr. Talon, a Mokari physician, stood in his hospital watching patients die from diseases that had been eliminated from his world 10 years ago. He remembered Captain Ryan Blake, the human doctor who had worked in this very building until a month ago. Ryan had performed miracles here, teaching techniques that seemed impossible. Before leaving, Ryan had spent his final week training Mokari doctors in emergency procedures. He had worked 20-hour days, barely sleeping, determined to give them every bit of knowledge he could. Talon remembered Ryan's last words. "I wish I could stay. I wish things were different. Take care of them for me." Now Talon understood that Ryan had known what was coming. The human doctor had tried to prepare them, but a week of training could not replace years of experience and education. Every day, Talon lost patients he knew Ryan could have saved. The agricultural collapse came slower, but was just as devastating. Human scientists had revolutionized farming across the galaxy, developing crop strains that grew faster, produced more, and required less water. The systems were automated, efficient, and built on principles of genetics and chemistry that other species had never fully mastered. On the farming world of Green Haven, crops that should have been thriving were withering in the fields. The automated systems were malfunctioning, and no one knew how to fix them. The Mokari farmers stared at displays filled with numbers and codes they could not interpret. "The humans made it look easy," said Farmer Kento, a third-generation agriculturalist. "They would look at these screens and immediately know what the plants needed. We just followed their instructions. We never learned to see what they saw. Food shortages were predicted within 6 months, starvation within a year." In the council chamber, the emergency session had lasted for 3 days straight. Representatives who had not slept properly in weeks shouted at each other, trying to assign blame for a crisis that was spiraling beyond control. "We need to force them to help us," demanded Zorath, though his voice lacked its former confidence. "Send military ships to human space. Make them understand they have responsibilities." Krell slammed his forearms on the table. "With what? Half our fleet cannot operate without human-maintained systems, and the ships that can move would be destroyed the moment they crossed human borders. Did you not read my report? Then what do you suggest?" Zorath shot back. "That we simply accept this catastrophe? I suggest we accept responsibility for creating it," Krell said quietly. "We voted to remove humanity from our affairs. They have honored our wishes. This is what the galaxy looks like without them." The council fell into silence. Around them, the great station of Unity Prime creaked and groaned. Even here, in the heart of galactic government, systems were beginning to fail. The human engineers who had maintained the station's critical infrastructure were gone. Meanwhile, supplies were being discovered in unexpected places. A Torvian supply station on the edge of nowhere found containers of medical equipment appearing overnight. No ships were spotted, no deliveries logged. But suddenly they had the means to treat their sick. A Mokari farming community woke to find seed stocks of traditional crops, the kind their ancestors had grown before human innovation. There were instructions too, simple ones, showing how to return to older methods that were less efficient but more sustainable. A message beacon was discovered near one such supply drop. When activated, it showed the face of Paul Harris, a human engineer many species recognized. His message was brief and recorded weeks ago. "To whoever finds this," Paul said, his weathered face serious but not unkind. "We heard your vote. We understood what it meant. The Galactic Council made it clear that humanity's presence was unwanted, that our way of doing things disrupted the natural order you prefer." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We are not angry. We are not seeking revenge. We simply recognize that you have chosen a path we cannot walk with you. These supplies should help you transition to independence. The seeds are heirloom varieties that require traditional knowledge, not human innovation. The medical equipment is basic but reliable. The tools are simple enough for anyone to use." Paul looked directly into the camera. "We came to the galaxy hoping to be part of something greater than ourselves. We shared everything we had, everything we knew, because we believed in the Council's vision of cooperation. But cooperation requires mutual respect, and your vote showed us where we stand. We wish you well," he concluded. "We hope you build the future you want, but we will not be part of it. Goodbye." The message ended. Species across the galaxy watched it and felt the weight of their choice. The humans were not hiding. They were not plotting revenge. They had simply accepted the Council's judgment and moved on. But moving on meant taking with them 2 centuries of accumulated innovation, knowledge, and capability. They had been the galaxy's problem solvers, the ones who saw challenges as opportunities. Without them, every problem became a crisis. Every crisis a potential catastrophe. On Unity Prime, as another system failed and emergency crews scrambled to implement repairs they barely understood, Krell stood at the window watching human space in the distance. The borders remained closed, the silence remained absolute, and the galaxy continued to unravel, one system at a time, learning too late what it had lost. 2 weeks had passed since the vote, and the galaxy was beginning to notice something strange. The usual hum of human activity had gone silent. Trade ships that normally filled the commercial lanes were absent. Communication channels that once buzzed with human voices carried only empty static. Krell, a senior member of the Savorian Empire's diplomatic corps, sat in his office reviewing reports. As a 4-armed reptilian being with bronze scales and sharp analytical mind, he prided himself on understanding patterns. And the pattern he saw now worried him deeply. He had tried to contact the Human Trade Office on Station Meridian. The response was an automated message. "This office is closed. Please direct all inquiries to Earth Central Administration." When he tried to reach Earth Central Administration, he got another automated response. "We are not currently accepting communications from Galactic Council members. Thank you." Krell's concern grew as more reports arrived on his desk. A Torvian medical facility sent desperate messages. The human doctors who had been treating a plague outbreak had vanished overnight, leaving only basic instructions that the local physicians could not fully follow. 3 patients had died already. The commercial hub at Crossroads Station reported that every human-operated business had closed. Shops were locked, warehouses emptied. Even the small restaurant where human cuisine had become popular was dark. The human owner had left a note on the door. "Thank you for your patronage. We are closed permanently." Something larger was happening, something the council had not anticipated. Krell decided he needed to see for himself. He assembled a small team and boarded his personal ship, setting course for the nearest major human settlement in neutral space. The journey took 3 days. When they arrived at the colony world of Haven's Rest, Krell expected to find a bustling human settlement of nearly 50,000 people. Instead, his ship's scanners showed something impossible. The colony was empty. Krell led his team down to the surface. They walked through streets that had been full of life just weeks ago. Houses stood intact, their doors unlocked. Gardens were carefully watered by automated systems. Public buildings showed no signs of damage or hurried evacuation. But there were no people. Not a single human remained. In the Central Administration Building, Krell found records that showed a methodical departure. Every citizen had been evacuated in an organized convoy. They had taken personal belongings but left the infrastructure intact. It was as if they had simply decided the colony no longer mattered and had walked away from years of work. "They planned this," said Vera, one of Krell's assistants, a young Savorian with keen instincts. "This kind of evacuation takes coordination. They must have been preparing for weeks, maybe months." Krell nodded slowly. The vote did not surprise them. They were ready for it. But why leave everything behind? Why not negotiate? He found part of his answer in the colony's medical center. Dr. Lisa Morgan's research facility had been the pride of this settlement, a place where human medical science pushed boundaries that benefited dozens of species. Krell had personally known 3 people whose lives had been saved by treatments developed here. The facility was pristine. Equipment worth millions of credits sat unused. But when Krell tried to access the research databases, he found them completely wiped. Every cure, every treatment protocol, every breakthrough that had not yet been published was gone. Only the most basic, already public information remained. They took their knowledge with them, Vera whispered, horrified. Across the galaxy, other species were making similar discoveries. The Xanthari Collective found their colony ships experiencing system failures. Human engineers had designed and maintained these vessels for the past century. Without them, the Xanthari barely understood how their own ships worked. The Makari Union faced a different crisis. Human agricultural scientists had revolutionized their food production, developing techniques that fed billions. Now those scientists were gone, and the Makari farmers realized they did not fully understand the systems they relied on. Crop yields began dropping within days. On Unity Prime, the Council convened an emergency session. The chamber that had celebrated 2 weeks ago now filled with worried voices. Zorath stood at his podium trying to maintain control. "The humans are making a statement," he said, his voice less confident than before. "They will realize they need us as much as we need them. They will return." But Krell was no longer convinced. He had seen too much. "I request permission to travel to human space, to attempt direct communication with Earth's government." The Council approved immediately, desperate for any contact. Krell's ship, carrying official Council representatives and a message of clarification about the resolution, set course for the border of human territory. The journey took a week. As they approached human space, Krell's communications officer suddenly announced they were being hailed. Hope surged through the ship. The message was automated but polite. "You are approaching restricted space. Humanity has withdrawn from galactic affairs. These borders are closed to all non-human vessels. Please adjust your course. This is your only warning." Krell tried to respond to explain they were official ambassadors seeking dialogue. The automated system repeated its message word for word, then fell silent. They tried to cross the border anyway. The moment Krell's ship passed the designated line, every system on the vessel shut down. Life support remained active, but engines, weapons, communications, and navigation all went dark. The ship drifted helplessly in space. After 10 minutes, systems suddenly restored. Another message arrived. "You have been warned. Humanity seeks no conflict with the Galactic Council, but we will defend our borders. Please depart." Krell ordered the retreat. As his ship limped away, he stared at the vast expanse of human space now sealed behind technology his people could not breach or understand. How long had humans possessed such capabilities? How much had they hidden from the Council? Back on Unity Prime, Krell delivered his report to a shaken Council. The humans were not coming back. They were not negotiating. They had simply removed themselves from galactic society completely. The economic reports began arriving the next day. Galactic trade had dropped by 30%. Medical facilities across Council space reported supply shortages. Infrastructure failures were being reported from a dozen different sectors. In the Council chamber, representatives who had voted enthusiastically for Resolution 7749 now looked at each other with growing unease. They had believed they were putting humanity in its place, teaching the upstart species a lesson about galactic order. Instead, they were beginning to realize that humanity had been holding up far more of that order than anyone had understood. The humans had not just participated in galactic society. In 2 short centuries, they had become essential to it, and now they were gone, leaving behind only empty colonies, locked databases, and a silence that grew louder with each passing day. Krell stood alone in the observation deck of Unity Prime, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond borders his people could not cross, humanity continued on without them, and for the first time in his long life, the diplomatic veteran felt truly afraid of what the future might hold. The great hall of Unity Prime floated in the darkness of space, a massive station that held the dreams of 48 different species. Inside the main chamber, representatives from across the galaxy gathered for another council session. The room buzzed with translated voices, each species speaking through devices that turned their words into something others could understand. Ambassador Helen Grant sat in the human section, her hands folded calmly on the table before her. She had served Earth for 15 years in this position, watching as the Council grew more and more uncomfortable with human presence. Today, she knew, would be different from all the others. The Vaxil representative stood at the center podium, his 3 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. His name was Zorath, and he had spent the last 2 years building support for what he called galactic balance. His tall, thin body swayed as he spoke, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Members of the Council," Zorath began, "we gather today to address a matter of critical importance. Humanity has expanded too quickly, taken too much, and pushed too hard into territories that should belong to all of us. They arrived in our galaxy only 200 years ago, yet they already control more trade routes than species who have been here for millennia." Helen listened without expression. She had heard these arguments before. The other species feared human ambition, human creativity, human refusal to accept limitations. They saw Earth's children as disruptors of an order that had existed long before humans learned to leave their own planet. Resolution 7749 is simple, Zorath continued. Humanity will retain rights only to their original solar system. All colonies in neutral space must be abandoned. All trade agreements will be renegotiated through council oversight, and humanity's voting privileges in this council will be suspended until they demonstrate they can cooperate within established boundaries. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some species shifted uncomfortably. The Torvians, who had worked closely with humans for decades, looked distressed. But most of the representatives nodded in agreement. Helen watched as species after species stood to voice support for the resolution. The Savorian Empire praised it as necessary. The Makari Union called it overdue. Even smaller species who had benefited from human medicine and technology remained silent, unwilling to stand against the majority. The vote was called. Electronic signals flashed across the chamber's displays. 43 in favor, 4 against, 1 abstention. The resolution passed. Celebration erupted among the council members. Zorath raised his arms in victory. The Vaxil delegation embraced each other. Finally, they believed, the human problem was solved. The aggressive newcomers would be contained, controlled, put in their place. Helen Grant stood slowly. The room gradually quieted as delegates noticed the human ambassador rising to speak. They expected anger, perhaps threats, maybe desperate pleading. Instead, Helen's face remained calm, almost serene. "Thank you, council members, for making your position clear," she said, her voice steady and professional. "Humanity has heard your decision. We understand the message you have sent us today." She gathered her data tablet and a few personal items from her desk. "I want to express gratitude for the years of cooperation we have shared. The human delegation will be departing Unity Prime within the next few hours. We wish you all well in your future endeavors." Zorath frowned, confused by the lack of resistance. "You accept the terms, then?" Helen looked at him with an expression he could not read. "We accept that you have made your choice. Now we will make ours. Goodbye, Ambassador Zorath. Goodbye, Council." She turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber. The other human delegates followed her, moving with calm efficiency. No rushed movements, no angry glances back. Just a simple, dignified departure. Within an hour, every human on Unity Prime began packing. Scientists in the research wing carefully stored their experiments. Traders in the commercial sector closed their shops. Engineers who maintained critical station systems trained their replacements in rapid sessions, showing other species how to operate equipment they had never fully understood. By evening, the first human ships were undocking from the station. More followed through the night. The exodus was orderly, quiet, and strangely final. In her personal quarters aboard the transport ship Destiny, Helen recorded a message that would be sent to every human settlement, station, and colony across the galaxy. Her words were simple. "The Council has voted, come home. It is time." Across known space, humans received the message. In the Arcturus sector, Dr. Lisa Morgan looked at her medical research facility, at the cures she had been developing for species who had just voted against her people. She saved her data, locked it behind encryption that only humans could break, and prepared to leave. On the trading station Crossroads, Captain Ryan Blake finished his last surgery, saving the life of a Makari child. He showed the local doctors what he had done, gave them what supplies he could spare, then quietly boarded his ship. In the industrial zones of the frontier reach, human engineers left behind facilities they had built, machines they had designed, systems they had optimized. They left instruction manuals, but the manuals were written for people who understood human thinking, human problem-solving, human innovation. The council members noticed the departures but assumed humans were simply being dramatic. They would cool off, realize they had no choice, and return to accept the new limitations. After all, where else could humanity go? The galaxy was the only stage large enough for their ambitions, but as days passed, the departures did not slow. They accelerated. Every human in council space was leaving, moving with purpose toward human-controlled territory. They did not argue, did not negotiate, did not protest. They simply left. In the council chamber, Zorath stood before the empty human seats. He had won, he told himself. The resolution had passed. Humanity was being put in its place. But something in the silence of those empty chairs made him uneasy. The humans had not fought. They had not raged. They had simply heard the galaxy's judgment and walked away. He did not yet understand that this quiet departure was not a retreat. It was a divorce, and like any divorce, both sides would soon discover what they had lost. The last human ship left Unity Prime on a Tuesday morning, standard galactic time. Ambassador Helen Grant stood at the viewport, watching the great station shrink into the distance. She felt no anger, no bitterness, only a strange sense of relief. Behind her, the galaxy continued turning, and ahead of her, humanity's future waited, separate and unknown,